Will Demonte Casey have a big free agent market, and are the Cowboys planning on using Tony Pollard as their slot receiver in 2022? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And I'm joined by, of course, Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, we've got a lot of rumors and notes to get through from the NFL Combine. But any big news or anything surprise you over the last couple of days? I know we haven't had testing yet. It's going to happen later this afternoon, recording this on Thursday. But anything noteworthy from the Combine yet?
Oh, it's hand size season again. It's whether you care about it a little, whether you care about it none, whether all you care about is that other people care about it too much or that other people care about it too little. It's definitely time to get into Twitter and yell at each other about whether hand sizes matter. So outside of that, no, there's lots. I mean, it's the first day. You start getting some whispers. We're going to talk about some of the stuff, but I don't know that there was anything like earth-shattering necessarily. More just like whispers in the wind.
Yeah, there was some wide receiver heights and weights that we were tweeting out. Just some that were interesting, but nothing dramatic or completely shocking. Like we kind of have an idea of these guys at this point. Yeah. Now the testing numbers, that'll be a different story. We'll talk about some of those tomorrow once we watch the drills and stuff tonight. But let's get to some of the news and notes. I want to first start with a guy that is on the Cowboys roster currently, Demonte Casey. According to Matt Lombardo of Fansided, he's talked to people down there at the NFL Combine. A lot of whispers about what's going to happen in free agency, and he's hearing that Damontae Kazee, the Cowboys free safety, is going to have a big market here in the next couple of weeks. Is that surprising to you?
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, I thought that he played okay last year, but I mean, also I felt like he was playing at a level that Hooker probably should have replaced him more near the end of the season. I think that you look at his resume and his career. I think that you can convince yourself if you're a front office that, hey, this is a guy that had 7 interceptions, X amount of years ago. Yep. He's finally healthy. He's coming off of he played a full year without having any kind of repercussions from that horrible injury. And to his credit, came back at an incredible pace from that injury, way earlier. I mean, just look at the time frame of him versus Malik Hooker on that, and it's incredible just how quickly he was able to come back. But as far as whether he's deserving or based on the Cowboys side of things, I'm not like dying to re-sign him. No. But I think if the idea is that, hey, there's a free safety out there who has ball skills, who may be coming in with a healthy year under his belt, maybe the market's heavier for him because there aren't a lot of those types of players. I could see that. But I just, when I look at him or like Jesse Bates, like those guys are not kind of in the same category at all or the same tier at all.
But I wonder if there'll be a lot of people that are interested in signing him on a 1 year, let's say $6 million deal or $7 million deal, because outside of the torn Achilles, he's never missed a game in his NFL career. And now you're getting him in year 2, kind of coming off that injury. He's got insane ball production, right? Over the last 4 years, he's got 12 interceptions. And he plays, and he has a bunch of snaps under his belt. I could see a team just feeling like, you know what? Let's just give him a 1 year deal. We know he's a capable starter, and let's move on to a different position. I can see it.
Do it. Sign him for big money. Let's get that comp pick coming in next year. Because, I mean, I thought he played admirably for the Cowboys. The Cowboys just happened to sign 3 safeties last offseason that all were playing pretty well, and then they also already had Wilson in the fold. So Maybe we are underappreciating him, but to be honest, it felt like near the end I wanted to see more of Hooker
That's exactly my point.
and less of Kazee. So I'm not exactly sad to see him go, but I do certainly wish him well on his way.
If the money is the same, who would you rather have, Malik Hooker or Demonte Casey?
Hooker, I think. I mean, I think he just got a guy who finally
The
getting
prices
healthy.
won't be the same, by the way.
Yeah.
They're not going to be the same. Hooker's going to be significantly cheaper, and he probably should be because of the injury history, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm willing to take a gamble, and it still is a gamble at this point with Hooker, that he's going to continue to ascend, and if he can stay healthy, continue to be a very useful, versatile player for the Cowboys.
There are a ton of teams out there with excess amount of cap space, and what ends up happening in free agency is the middle tier guys, and I kind of consider Casey a middle tier guy, right? Like,
Sure.
he's been a veteran for a while now. They end up getting paid more than they should, where he probably should be a 1 year, $4 to $5 million player. Wouldn't be shocking if like the Chargers gave him a 1 year, $8 million deal. Like that's kind of what happens in free agency, right? And it doesn't hurt you long term. It gives you a solid starter. I can understand why somebody might do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are living in this age where there's 4 or 5 teams that have just absolutely absurd amount of cap space, and they don't usually use that in a way where they're signing top end guys at crazy deals. They're usually using that money by bullying the middle of the market and kind of
trying to get like
guys.
eight guys that can play or start, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, just to use the Chargers for example, I think that's a what they probably should be doing because their top end talent is really good, but the middle of that roster is awful. And if you can get somebody like Kazee on a somewhat cheap deal and it doesn't prevent you from doing anything long term, why not?
Yeah. I definitely, if the Cowboys didn't, honestly, almost any other year, I would say the Cowboys should sign Kazee. It's just that I feel like they found something in Hooker that could really work. He's probably going to be cheaper. And I just feel like, the Cowboys are in a decent spot, especially if they can re-sign Curse too. So this is one of the few years where the Cowboys would not be necessarily as interested in signing Kazee.
And we've got our guy, Israel Mukamu.
Mukamu's going to come back. Yeah.
Tyler Coyle.
Although
I think he got hurt at the end of the year, right?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, I think because he was playing some special teams for them. So, but I mean, the point is that they have answers here more than they've ever had in a while.
Correct. All right, let's get to some rumors that we're hearing from the Combine. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline. Football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all of the latest odds, totals, players' performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Landon, one of my favorite things to do is scroll through Twitter late at night when everybody at the scouting combine has had a couple drinks in them because we start to learn some things that people are talking about. And I actually want to read a tweet that I saw last night about the Cowboys. This is a tweet from @RosterWatch, a really good follow actually on Twitter. They are down in Indianapolis, and he said, the Cowboys have been linked to Iowa center Tyler Linderbaum, but we're told he isn't part of the plan. It likely means Dallas feels strongly that he'll be off the board, more than indicating they wouldn't have interest. Do you buy that?
Which part? the fact that he won't be there? Well, I think that I would not be surprised if he wasn't there. I mean, I think we're all kind of anticipating that he will be there because of, the many extenuating circumstances that we're dealing with. Undersized, playing a position that there's, that there's just not a lot of. There's only 32 spots in the whole league for, and the fact that he's a kind of generational type of player, except for the fact that Creed Humphrey came out last year, and everyone considers Creed Humphrey the generational type player. So I think that his stock is predictably all over the place. So we've been kind of, talking about it the other way, like, oh, there's a good chance that he'll fall. There's a good chance that he'll fall. there is also a chance that he won't fall.
Yeah.
And that someone like the Eagles or someone that might need a center goes out and gets a guy like that. So I do believe that, and I certainly do believe that the Cowboys should be interested here. I mean, he fits what they want to do in a lot of ways. We talked about previously that the Cowboys are not quite the full zone blocking team that they were previously, but that doesn't mean that you can't get Tyler Linderbaum.
Right.
So I think that there are ways to talk yourself in and out of this situation, in equal measure. I think it's so. I'm interested that the Cowboys are interested, and I think it makes some sense. I also am very fascinated by the fact that they don't seem to believe that he'll make it down to them at 24.
All right, this one kind of ties in. Actually, I'm going to tie two of these together because they're both fascinating. Among the top offensive linemen in this class, so the Cowboys only have 60 formal interviews at the Combine, which actually seems like a lot. And I know they talk to everybody, but of the top offensive linemen, including Kenyon Green, Zion Johnson, Trevor Penning, Ed Ingram, the Cowboys have had 0 formal interviews with those guys. It's also worth mentioning that John Mosher at The Athletic said that Lyle Collins is not going to be moving to left guard this offseason. He's going to stick at right guard. He's been pretty emphatic about it. He's going to stay at right tackle, and he's going to compete with Terrence Steele for that spot. Does that surprise you? Is there a chance that maybe the Cowboys don't feel like their offensive line is a concern?
It's an interesting thought. Here's how you can make it work, right? If the Cowboys have plans to sign a free agent left guard this offseason, and if they plan on keeping Lyle Collins at right tackle, that means they still have Terrence Steele, right? He's still, as far as I know, he's still under an exclusive rights free agent.
Yeah, he's got 2 more years left on his deal.
Yeah, so he's still very locked in with the Cowboys. You could easily make an argument that if the Cowboys are willing to spend a little bit of money to sign a free agent left guard, that they don't need to make any more additions there.
Okay, what if it's not even a starter caliber, but it's a guy that's got a bunch of experience in the league that they feel like if we have this guy and Connor McGovern at left guard, we're okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's another route that they could easily go. I do think that they could easily go the route of not feeling that the draft had to be the answer for that position, because you don't have, like they say, you don't have to have a steak meal on every plate. I think that the Cowboys like a lot of what Connor McGovern does, but I don't think they like the way he played left guard last year.
Sure.
I would be surprised if they completely gave up on that this early with him. And maybe signing a vet to kind of provide competition at least gives you a healthy floor there. But maybe their thought process is they don't want to overinvest in the offensive line, meaning like, drafting a first round pick. Maybe their thought process is, hey, we get a vet in, we have Connor McGovern, and then on top of that, maybe we draft a guy,
Sure.
developmental 3rd or 4th round guy that you hope that 2 or 3 years from now can compete for a starting spot. That's another way to kind of solve that, and then that way you kind of keep your powder dry, draft speaking wise, and you have kind of open options at 24, so that if something like Linderbaum or someone that you like fell to you, you have the opportunity to take them, as opposed to feeling the need to be forced to take a guard to take that spot.
It probably just depends on what they think of Connor McGovern. Like, do they think he can be a starter this year for him?
Yeah.
Or do they like somebody else? Do they like Matt Farniok to maybe take that spot? Or are they just, maybe they already have a deal kind of lined up? Like for example, what's the Andrew Norwell from Jacksonville?
Yeah, Norwell.
Maybe they feel like with Norwell and McGovern and Farniok, and we've got our 3 tackles that we really like. We've got Josh Ball as our 4th tackle. We're okay on the offensive line. Let's use our resources at receiver, which I don't agree with that, or edge or defensive tackle or something like that. I mean, I think it's certainly possible.
That would make some sense, and I think getting in Norwell is a guy that I had kind of penciled in as well, right? Like
or somebody like that, right?
Yeah,
Austin
like
Corbett for the Rams, who kind of like somebody like a journeyman like that.
someone who's like come off a big contract and was good, but maybe not worth the huge money that they got,
Sure.
right? That
Sure.
they could give you solid snaps while you're trying to develop someone down roster. That all makes sense to me. I do think that we get myopic about oh, this is a problem, this is a hole, we have to solve it with the draft. The Cowboys, have done a very good job at different points of attacking need
Yep.
multiple different ways, and I don't know that we should anticipate anything here
Yeah,
different here.
there's also a chance they're just not trying to tip their hand. Maybe they
Yep.
absolutely love Kenyon Green, but they don't. I mean, and maybe they already met with him, during the season or something else, and they're trying to. Who knows? That's why it's so hard to discern anything that you're getting here.
He's not part of he can't be part of the Dallas Day situation. I don't know if if they've changed the rules with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they dropped COVID stuff, so maybe that all comes back like it was before. But either way, Kenyon Green, from what I understand, is a Houston kid, or I think he's from Humble or something. So he's not eligible to come in as part of Dallas Day. So
And maybe he'll be a 30 visit, right?
maybe he'll be a 30 visit, or maybe what we'll find out is that him and Zion Johnson and all these guys are all going to come on a plane with one of the 30.
Well, and here's the thing. Maybe if you, because I kind of think the teams have already had to send in their 30 visit request because they start here in a couple of weeks.
Mhm.
Maybe it's, hey, we're going to have Zion. We're going to have Kenyon Green in. Let's not use one of our 60 formal interviews. Let's talk to a different position like this one. The Cowboys have met with every top running back in this year's class. They've used a formal visit with Breece Hall, with Isaiah Spiller. Is that surprising to you?
It's not, actually. And frankly, we kind of talked about the idea of this, that let's say you want to start using Pollard in a method that is not just a running back.
Well, let's tie that in here, because this was another one of our segments.
Okay.
But we'll take a quick break, and I'll tell you what John Mosher had to say about Tony Pollard. All right, we are back. Let's talk about Tony Pollard, who John Mosher said the Cowboys' plan is, if they lose Amari Cooper, is to use more of Tony Pollard in the slot with Michael Gallup on the outside. So again, it seems like they're not going to go into the offseason or going to next year without one of Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, right? So Gallup on the outside, CeeDee Lamb on the outside, Tony Pollard in the slot. If that is the case, maybe you do need another running back.
Yeah, I think you do. I mean, and this is something that you and I had talked about earlier in the season, is if your plan is to try to use Pollard more, and that doesn't necessarily mean as a running back. Like if you want to use him more as a wide receiver, I mean, if you go and watch the playoffs and you try to watch, what happened with Deebo Samuel, if you're trying to recreate that situation, in my opinion, you're not recreating that situation as much with Lamb, as much as everyone wanted to kind of point him there. I think it's Tony Pollard that's that guy, right? The guy.
Well, let's remember, Tony Pollard did this exact role in college. It's not new to him, right?
No, running back was new to him.
Yeah, running back was new to him.
Yeah, playing slot receiver, that's old hat for him.
Yeah.
So I think the idea of kind of making him a movable chess piece, that means that he gets more touches. That means he gets on the field a lot easier. And if you're going to do that, you probably need to reduce your load of him playing running back, especially if something happens to Zeke.
Or if you're planning on moving on from Zeke after this year,
or right? Both, honestly, or both.
Yeah.
Because what you need for this year is you need running back insurance, because if you're finally going to put Pollard in this special category of, okay, he's not really a running back, he's just our offensive weapon type guy. He will take some carries from the backfield. He will catch some passes out wide, but I think you need to remove him from the running back depth chart. Right? Because I think that what happens is that if Zeke gets injured, suddenly you're having to change your game plan, because you know that you're going to need to give Pollard twice as many touches simply because he's the number 2 running back. When in actuality, what you should be doing, and what it sounds like they might be doing, is developing a third running back so that Zeke can either take breaks and let this guy take some of the bell cow carries, so they're not adding a whole bunch of unnecessary touches to Pollard, and then allow Pollard to kind of continue his role while dealing with a kind of guy who's getting the bellwether the carries. So you can still kind of continue an offense that you were prepared for all season that includes Pollard moving around and being a chess piece.
first and foremost, how much do you think Cowboy fans would freak out if they drafted a running back, let's say at pick 56?
I turn that question to you, sir. How much would you freak out if the Cowboys
I
drafted a
probably
running
would
back
laugh at this point. I probably just I would find it kind of hilarious, but I think the second round's too early. Now, third round, I think that's when you can start having a conversation. And maybe it's one of those things like I don't know, they pick at 90 something in the third round. Maybe they go up to 75 and they get a running back that they feel like can be an every down back. I don't hate that. Like that's the range. I think it becomes very palatable to take a running back.
I mean,
At
you have
56
to.
with this the amount of needs they have, it feels rich, right?
You have to feel okay with it because honestly, like if the thought process is that you're going to get rid of Zeke after this following season, and you're not going to try to draft a first or second round running back, then the plan is to draft a down the draft guy and then
Yeah.
have him ready for the year when Zeke comes
Correct.
in, not trying to just plug and play
Which I agree
a
with, by
third
the
round
way.
rookie, right?
I think it's nice to have a running back know your scheme,
Yeah.
kind of get close to the speed of the NFL. And then year two is when they handle the majority of their carries. Like, I understand that running backs can come in and be productive right away. I just don't always know if that's the best way to do it either. I also just want to about this class at the running back position. There's a really good chance we don't have a single running back drafted in the top 45, 50 picks, but you could have 5 drafted between 50 and 80, right? I kind of think that's the sweet spot. There's some really talented running backs in that group. So if one of those guys does fall in the third round, that's when it becomes appealing, just not at 56.
Yeah, and I mean you have to remember what a guy like Zeke Elliott's doing for your offense. You know, he's going to be a huge pass blocker, so and a lot of other kind of the dirty work stuff. So you need a running back who's prepared to do all that stuff, and that's not someone who you necessarily can draft as a rookie and have a fully formed running back unless you're drafting in the first or second round. So like the point is if you need a running back for next year, you probably need to figure out a way to draft someone in the bottom of the first or somewhere in the second round. But that's not necessarily the best way to approach that. The better way is what we're talking about, right? Have your running back and then draft the next one while your current running back is still there, but use a later round pick till you have time to develop.
I agree. Running backs test, I believe, tomorrow. I'm trying to remember. I think tomorrow. So we'll see how some of those guys test. There's a couple of running backs in this class, that are really good athletes and really good runners that just aren't pass protectors yet. And I think that's the type of running back the Cowboys might be interested in, right? Like if you get a really talented runner in the third round, but you just don't want to use them in passing situations yet, it's perfect. Right, because you've already got Pollard who can do the receiving stuff. You got Zeke who can do the blocking stuff. That's probably the type of running back that you're going to be okay drafting with in the third round.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that it makes some sense there. Like I said, the Cowboys have another guy that they like in Rico Dowdle, but I think that this is adding another guy here as a potential option for next season and a little bit this season. I think makes a lot of sense. Last
one, the Cowboys have met with basically every tight end in this class. That's not really news because, again, you're going to meet with everybody. But it does make some sense that they're probably going to draft a tight end fairly early. Does that change if they happen to franchise Dalton Schultz? Do you think there's any less interest in drafting a tight end, or do you think there's actually more interest in doing
it? I mean – I don't know that there would be more interest. I mean, unless you have, I'd be interested to see why you would hypothesize that there might be more interest if they franchise.
Because I think then okay, this is a 1-year deal, and now hey, we can draft a tight end in the third round that maybe has a little bit more upside. We don't have to play him right away.
Yeah,
right? I think maybe that changes the type of tight end that you're going after because if they go into free agency the draft with Blake Jarwin, Sean McCool, and let's say Jeremy Sprinkle, kind of feel like you need to get somebody that can play right away, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I'm an advocate for bringing back Schultz. I think that there's, I don't know, maybe I've forgotten, but I mean, I see a lot of people on Twitter talking about why would you franchise a guy that can't block, and I'm like, y'all assumed that he can't block because of that one time that they threw a screen while he was split out wide and he was asked to block a DB in space. That's not exactly the normal job of tight end blocking. So I think that the Cowboys need to have a plan here. They use the tight end regularly in this offense, and I think it's an important piece that people kind of just are forgetting. So whether they need to draft a guy or if they had a franchise Schultz, what I don't think that they will or should do is have any plan that is, Jarwin is your first option.
No, I don't think so.
They need a tight end in here. Like whether it's drafting a high guy or signing someone in free agency, they need to improve that position. I would say every bit as much as offensive line, and we talk about offensive line all the time with this situation. So, I think the Cowboys need to have a plan here. And if it's not franchising Schultz, then it needs to be either drafting a guy, signing a guy, a decently high-end free agent, maybe not the top-end guys, but somebody decent in free agency or potentially both.
I kind of think both. Kyle Rudolph got cut yesterday by the Giants. Any interest there?
To play tight end?
Yes. Play tight end.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't hate it, because if he's somebody that is your second tight end and you're maybe developing a guy behind him, I don't hate it.
He's reliable, I think, in the sense that he can keep an offense going. I mean, he's not gonna, he in this offense he'll have a lot provided for him, I think. But
he's a good enough blocker.
Yes, he's a good enough blocker. Good enough is probably right where I'd put him. Right.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. It's not the long-term solution there, but I think as if you're trying to find a stopgap solution at the position, it's not the worst.
There are quite a few of those guys that are good stopgap ones where I would be fine giving them a 1-year deal. Basically, tide me over to the draft, right? I think Jeff Swaim is like at the very bottom barrel of that. Blake Bell is at the bottom.
Swaim's there?
Yeah, you want Jeff Swaim back?
Give me Swaim, but not as a starter. I mean,
you want him as a third tight end, right?
Yeah, and that's why I don't think you can sign him. I mean, they still have a sprinkle on the roster, right?
I think he signed a 1-year deal.
So if you wanted to get a third tight end, man, bring me Swaim train all day. But yeah, he's not a solution. And here's the other thing too that the Cowboys shouldn't go cheap here. Like tight end is a very important position to this offense in general. And I think it kind of gets looked over, but I do think that they should, they need to have a decent player here, especially if the idea is that you're getting rid of someone like Amari Cooper. You really need to bolster the rest of your positions and not just remain a status quo, because otherwise you're really just taking a step back in talent. You're not really doing anything else or advancing the ball on offense.
That's why I would rather pay David Njoku than Dalton Schultz, though, because you're getting more explosive, you're getting more athletic, and you might be a little bit more inconsistent, but David Njoku is somebody I think that could actually help improve your offense. That's just my opinion.
I don't disagree with that. Like if you're going to go out and get a real explosive playmaker at the position, I'm willing to take a little bit less as a blocker to do so. But I think for me, that's why I like Schultz, is because I know I can get decent blocking, or at least what they need for blocking on the edge. And he's a good enough receiver that he can actually make teams pay for the coverage that they're deploying against wide receivers.
I still like the Hayden Hurst option. The Cowboys almost drafted him in the first round in 2018. If Van Der Esch would have been off the board, that's who they would have picked. Obviously, I think him and Dak are close after their game in 2020, I believe. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. He's a capable blocker, gives you a little bit of athleticism down the field. Tight end is a position.
Healthy? Has he been staying healthy lately?
Fairly healthy, like playing 14-ish games a year.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I mean, because that was obviously the issue early on in his career, is that he was an older prospect coming out and that he dealt with some injuries. He's obviously physically very talented. So that's another guy that I think I would be interested in.
So 2019 played 16 games, 2020, 16 games. This year he missed 3 games. So
that's fine. I'll take that. Absolutely.
We'll see what the Cowboys do in free agency, and we'll see what the tight ends look like today at the NFL Combine. It should be a good day for them. I think it should be. I think every one of them is working out. all of them in different shapes and sizes. I saw one
Yeah.
tight end came in at 279. One came in at 229. It's one of the most fascinating positions because you just see so many different, shapes and sizes all the way across the board. So really, really looking forward to that. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about all the combine stuff that we saw from Thursday afternoon and Thursday evening. We'll talk about some of the measurements for the offensive linemen that come in on Friday morning. Busy time here on the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. We're also on YouTube. Check us out there. Follow the show at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.